Thanks everybody for being here today. I will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and I would like to appoint Shayla Shreves as the recorder for the meeting. So welcome to our November business meeting. And once again, I want to extend appreciation to the architect of the Capitol for having us in this grand room. And I'll turn to the representative of the architect of the Capitol in just a few minutes. But I did want to just make a couple of sort of housekeeping items. As you all know, the meeting is being live cast on the ACHP's Facebook page at USACHP. I will also remind members that when you speak to go ahead and press the button so that your mic turns green, because we do have people listening in cyberspace. And I think that's all that Shayla told me to say. So I will turn to her to do a roll call of members and to please state any proxies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our attendance roll call. Chair Sarah Bronin.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jordan Tannenbaum. Carmen Jordan Cox. Erica Avrami. Monica Rhodes.
Here.
Sunny Ward.
Here.
Jane Woodfin. Amelia Marchand.
Here.
Governor John Carney.
Here.
Representing the architect of the Capitol, Joe Imamura.
Here.
Representing the Secretary of Agriculture, Corey Lopez. Representing the Secretary of the Interior, Mike Martinez.
Here.
Representing the Secretary of Defense, Ron Tickle. Representing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Trey Watkins. Representing the Secretary of Transportation, Christopher Coase.
Here.
Representing the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Michael Brennan.
Here.
Representing the Administrator of GSA, Beth Savage. Representing the Chair of the Council on Environmental Quality, Anna Unruh Cohen.
Here.
Representing the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Betsy Merritt.
Here.
Representing the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, Lakota Hobai.
Here.
And we have two proxies for the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers. That would be NAFPO. And proxy for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That would be the National Trust. And we have 4 observers for the ACHP Foundation, Susan Barnes.
Here.
For the Preserve America Youth Summits, Ann Walker. For the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, Stephanie Paul. And for the Permitting Council, Eric Beitel.
Here.
And did I miss anyone? I think that's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So next we'll take a motion and a second to adopt the agenda found in the meeting book. Okay, so Member Jordan Cox, seconded by Member Avrami. Voice vote, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, any abstentions or noes? Okay. And then I would like to ask for a motion and a second to adopt the minutes of the July business meeting, which are in everybody's meeting book materials.
So moved.
Governor Carney.
Second.
Motion second by Member Rhodes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'm actually going to turn to Mr. Imamura, representative architect of the Capitol, to welcome us to this beautiful room and say a few words about it.
Good morning. Welcome to the Kennedy Caucus Room. We're delighted to have you all on the Capitol campus this morning. Strengthen our partnership and with the ACHP and with the council here, and for visitors and guests, welcome as well. This is certainly a historic room, and I think Mr. Austin shared a few words last time, and I know that we have a full agenda this morning, but again, thank you for coming this morning, and we're delighted that everybody's here.
Thank you. With that, we will do also a couple of welcomes and a couple of goodbyes. And first, I wanted to welcome, as the newest chair of NAFPO, Lakota Hobai. It was excellent to meet you for the first time this week, and you really come with an incredible breadth of experience. I wanted to just invite you, if you would like to say a few words yes, go ahead.
Bonjour, Kinwa, Lakota Hobai and Deshnakas, Bodoi wat Miquendao, Shishibaniak na Bendaguis, Mong on Dodem, Gazikabanzai and Diane, Mina, Cleveland, Ohio, Mina, Shawnee, Oklahoma, Mina, St. Mary's, Kansas, and Doshbia. Hello, everyone. My name is Lakota Hobai. I serve as the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Matchpinash Band of Potawatomi Indians. They are located in southwestern Michigan, about halfway between Grand Rapids and the city of Kalamazoo. And I'm an enrolled tribal member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, which is headquartered in Shawnee, Oklahoma. So I am excited to be here. I've been a TIPO a little over 5 years now for a Matchpinash band, but I've been working in tribal government, specifically for Potawatomi nations, for about the last 13 years. Just kind of got trained up within that and just grew in various capacities in really understanding what it means to exert our sovereignty and what it means to grow those next generations to make sure that we maintain our culture, our language, and everything that makes us who we are as Potawatomi people. So miigwech, and thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, welcome. I also wanted to welcome our newest observer, who you heard in the roll call, Eric Bytel of the Permitting Council. And I will say that during my time on the ACHP, I've come to understand how important it is for the ACHP to play an active role at the Permitting Council and in permitting discussions. And so I just wanted to offer a welcome and to allow you to say a few remarks if you would like.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. I think it's an important role for the Permitting Council to play as an observer of the Advisory Council because of the role that we play across government to ensure that we are doing all that we can to increase efficiency while preserving the vital environmental protections that are the bedrock of our underlying statute. So we coordinate across government to ensure that the agencies are communicating effectively, providing predictability, transparency, and accountability to the permitting and review process for large infrastructure projects. And it's important for me to kind of hear these sorts of issues that may bubble up through these sorts of business meetings so that we can look for programmatic solutions across government that we can help to implement. And we have currently some funding available to be able to target investments at agencies to help solve some of the bottleneck issues that may come up. We've provided some funding to the Advisory Council for staff as well as IT solutions, and we are constantly looking for other opportunities for those improvements. So appreciate the opportunity to listen in and look forward to the partnership.
Thank you. And as I like to say, better late than never. I probably should have appointed you some number of meetings ago, but better late than never. So welcome. I did also just want to say a couple of goodbyes. First to Susan Barnes, who is stepping down in her role as chair of the ACHP Foundation. And I want to commend Susan not only for stepping in to chair that important organization, but also to reflect back on her service across 2 administrations before this. First appointed by President Bush, then appointed by President Obama to serve on the ACHP. And I think her service underscores the bipartisan nature of our effort, the bipartisan interest in historic preservation. And so I just wanted to say to Susan, thank you so much for coming back. And you never know, you may come back again in some other capacity. We can all hope, but thank you very much for your selfless service. And finally, in their absence, I wanted to thank the members of the Experts Advisory Committee. As you all know, I convene this committee to really advise the work of the council, but also to help to inform the things that I have chosen to do in my role. I was so pleased that the White House pulled from the membership of the Experts Committee when President Biden appointed Erica Avrami to serve on the ACHP. But all the appointees have in different ways informed our policy statements, our climate initiatives, our research plans, and again, some of the decisions I've made. So as their work draws to a close, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank them publicly if they are listening in. With that, for the record, I just wanted to note that DHS's representative has arrived, I believe, as well as our Vice Chair Tannenbaum. So thank you on that. Okay, so moving on to the first couple of agenda items, the report on recent activities, the members tour. I'll go a bit out of order with the activities first, and then the tour is one of our recent activities. First, just to say this fall, every fall is an award season for the ACHP. And I did want to offer my congratulations once again to the award winners of both of our awards, the ACHP HUD Secretaries Award and the National Trust Federal Partnerships Award, and to thank our staff, the CEO staff, including Lynn, Patricia, Shayla, and Susan, as she turns over a new chapter. They all deserve our gratitude, as do the jurors for these awards. Among other recent activities, I've continued a heavy outreach schedule. I beamed into the city of Santa Fe last week, as well as the UT San Antonio Notre Dame Duda Forum on sustainability and preservation. I think conversations that we are having here in Washington, D.C. are alive and well across preservation groups around the country, and those are just a couple of examples. It was particularly meaningful to me to head to San Diego to convene with the Latinos in Heritage Conservation, especially as the first person of color to lead the ACHP. And I was really pleased to attend several events in New Orleans. I think the center of gravity, thanks to the National Trust and the Pass Forward Conference, but a lecture at Tulane University hosted in part by our Experts Advisory Committee member Fallon Adu, a visit with the National Preservation Partners Network, who is, as you know, also an observer member of the ACHP, a really stimulating symposium on historic trades that was convened by the Jen Rett Foundation, the funder of internships, as you'll hear in a moment, and the 1772 Foundation Sustainability Conference. And I wanted to highlight that cluster of events to again underscore that everything that we talk about at the ACHP are topics of conversation very actively among preservationists today, especially issues related to, you might call it climate change, or you might flip it around, call it resilience, whatever you call it. These issues are top of mind for preservationists. And I once again want to thank staff, including Kiani Morris and the Office of Administration, for assisting with another busy season of travel. So just going now to the tour that we went to yesterday, it was wonderful to see everybody in person. And thanks again, of course, to Tanya Devonish, who has been an absolute pleasure to work with on our field trips. Hopefully this one was easy because it was walking distance from our offices. And we were joined by a number of staff who I think many of whom had worked on issues related to Union Station. We also were joined by the Department of Transportation Federal Preservation Officer, Colleen Vaughn. Thank you so much to everybody for joining. I'd like to actually pass around a really interesting set of photographs that we received from from Doug Carr, our host, the CEO of Union Station Redevelopment Corporation. Just so, while folks are listening in to any reflections, you can see the significant changes that have happened at Union Station over the years. And with that, I just wanted to invite any of the members to reflect on the tour itself, if anybody had anything to add. I, for one, was very excited to hear about the significant investments that will hopefully be made in the station because as it has changed significantly over the years, it must continue to do so. And so I was glad to hear about that. And of course, this agency will have a role in that process. Okay. So maybe a little bit more on that as I turn to the last agenda item, looking ahead to 2025. I will also note, just for the record, before I do, Undersecretary Wilkes is here from the Department of Agriculture. So nice to see you. I was thinking yesterday as we walked through Union Station about the stories we tell about historic preservation, the simplified stories that make history easier, that a railroad tore down Penn Station and so Congress acted. But those of us who are in preservation know that these stories are often much more complex than the simplified version. And I think nowhere is that more obvious than in Union Station. So much of the story of Union Station is about changes that people made, changes that people thought were a good idea, and then understanding that those might not have been such a great idea, and more changes to undo those mistakes and start again. And one of the images that I encourage you to review in the packet that I'm passing around is the giant pit that was dug in the middle of the Union Station main hall to accommodate bicentennial festivities, a move that at the time I think people thought was a brilliant idea, but we would look back on that and say, well, maybe not. And indeed, it was quickly covered over. After yesterday's tour, I thought, well, it looks like, we're in good hands. It looks like Union Station is going to continue to evolve. The investments that will continue to be made will both protect some of the beautiful architectural features while also making the station more usable for transit users, for people who use not just the trains and the buses, but also the bikes, and in fact, walk there. And use it as an extension, as a food court and retail space and more. And I guess for me, thinking about the evolution of Union Station is really almost synonymous with thinking about historic preservation. We think we're doing the right thing, especially again in the place where we're celebrating history when we dug that pit, but yet we continue to improve in the ways that we do things. And in thinking back, I really hope that that's what I've tried to do in this role, to try to examine what we've done, what we're doing now, what works, and also to help us find creative solutions that can help to improve what we're doing. And so if you'll indulge me, I just want to reflect briefly on my time here, which is also brief, just 22 months. And before I talk about what I hope I've left you with, I wanted to start with a couple of things that I feel remain undone and that I hope that the agency can continue to work on in 2025. The first one, I think, is continued clarity about how we apply and interpret the standards for the treatment of historic properties. I do think this is critical to our work. I think it's critical for preservation practice. And I hope that we continue to think about how those might operate in the field. I think we are desperately in need of a government-wide approach to resiliency and historic properties in all of the different respects that we have talked about on this council. I do believe that this is an issue that will not go away. I think that we can take a leadership role on this council. And again, we can use different words to come to the same results. And I think from a policy perspective, all of the ongoing presidential appointees that will that have terms, I encourage you to continue to think about how we might take this collective action. I believe that we need greater clarity about the role of tribes in the Section 106 process. This is a big part of unfinished business to me. I know Member Marchand will talk about the idea of a tribal advisory group. I also think that we need to figure out how we are going to operationalize our Indigenous Knowledge Policy Statement, another topic that we will hear her lead the conversation on soon. But this is an opportunity for us. Again, I think it's a bipartisan issue, and I think that we must continue to understand and articulate how tribal involvement, how tribal rights actually get enshrined into our documents. And then finally, clean energy permitting. We have done some of that in this administration. We have started to talk about that at the ACHP. But for me personally, we need to, as the ACHP, lead on weighing different values. And that includes maybe some of the easier large-scale items like transmission rebuilds and upgrades in place, but also to grapple with, I think, the increasing concerns especially in the West, of the large-scale clean energy projects. How do we figure out where those projects should go and what are the values that we weigh? I hope that our mapping initiative might help to start doing that. So I'd leave those 4 items at this meeting to maybe consider where you might go in 2025, no matter who is the leader. But we are where we are, and these are the things that I hope I've left you with as you start 2025. So first, a clarity about the role of the ACHP chair. As a second full-time chair, I've tried to work really hard to define this role. It is a presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed position, and I do believe the chair must steer the ACHP ship, help set priorities in collaboration with the council, and work with members and staff to achieve those priorities. That is what Congress expected when they established this role, and that is true no matter who is president. So I do encourage staff and council members to consider how the next chair can be actively educated on what the ACHP does, can be informed about the opportunities that the ACHP provides, and can be empowered to be the ACHP and historic preservation's most effective advocate within government. That is this person's role, and we need to make sure that they have all the tools that they need in order to ensure our historic places can be protected and preserved. I'll also underscore that we've seen in the example of Observer Barnes and so many others that preservation is bipartisan. So I want to encourage you to think positively about that. In fact, right after this meeting, I will be doing a bipartisan policy center event that focuses on historic preservation and affordable housing. So second thing I hope I've left you with is a presence for ACHP and permitting conversations. And I think the Permitting Council has been an excellent venue for that. I encourage the council members, staff to continue to equip the next chair to participate in leadership level conversations at the Permitting Council and beyond, because I think that is an opportunity for ACHP to show how effective it is in administering this very important process that we have and in weighing the values that we know we must uphold. Again, I think this is important no matter who is in the White House, and I think it benefits the ACHP to be actively involved in those conversations, as well as to bring creative solutions to the table. So there are a number of people, every person in this room has different ideas about how we might go about that. And I encourage you to continue to bring creative ideas. I hope the NHO exemption is one example of that. It does effectively, take some permitting decisions out of the review process, but it does so in a way that I believe weighs the values that we are intending to uphold. So third, I hope I've left you with a presence of the ACHP in policy conversations. So thanks to Drew Knoll and Reed, you all, and to all of you all, we've all collaborated pretty effectively to adopt 4 policy statements, each standing alone an important accomplishment, but together, I think a roadmap for how the ACHP can move forward. In light of these policy statements, we've co-convened 2 major conferences, 3 housing roundtables, and with the support of ACH staff, a lot of op-eds, speaking engagements, maybe more than ever for the agency. This has been an opportunity to establish a leadership role for the ACHP in these conversations happening both within preservation and outside of preservation, and it really must continue. And in the next administration, again, equipping the next chair with the kinds of information that we've been able to collectively gather, I think will be an effective strategy for the ACHP to continue to play its important role. Fourth, a commitment to people along with their places. So there is a line in the program comment that's currently out for discussion that has been suggested to be cut, but I'm just going to read it. It says, ultimately, this program comment aims to benefit the people who live in the housing, work in the buildings, and move using the transportation infrastructure being carried out, permitted, licensed, funded, assisted, or approved by federal agencies. And the reason keeping that line in there is so important is because our regulatory process is about people. Congress created the National Historic Preservation Act to help us prioritize historic preservation for people. And it's really important that we not abstract out some of the conversations that we're having. It's very important that we continue to understand our role as meeting the needs of people. And I think we can do that and can continue to do that in a number of ways. And we see Union Station as one example of that. And then finally, a commitment to educating and involving the next generation. And so, between office hours, between saying yes, I think, to virtually every activity at a university or at any college visit, the Cultural Heritage in the Forest program, and through internships. This is something that I've really tried to prioritize, certainly because I have that interest given my professor role, but just to focus in on the internships, because this is something that required significant staff assistance. Thank you to Judy, as well as Drew. I've directly supervised 29 interns since I've been here. And those are interns that communicated with me every day, met every week. And they're from 24 different schools, 3 from Pace, 2 from Arizona and Georgetown. But the range of schools, Baylor, Charleston, Columbia, Cornell, UConn, Eastern Michigan, Georgia, Goucher, Maryland, Middle Tennessee State, Minnesota, Ohio State, Penn, Pepperdine, Pittsburgh, Pratt, Savannah College of Art and Design, USC, Syracuse, Temple, and UT Austin. I say the names of the schools to underscore the diversity of students and geographies that are interested in preservation. I did not ask those students to apply. They sent in applications, and there were a number of other students that we could not accommodate. There is an interest in our field, and if we do not engage young people at a much larger scale, I think we will do our field a disservice, because we all know the demographics of preservation do not favor its long-term evolution all the time. But listen, I believe in young people. I do think that involving them specifically in the federal government and specifically in this agency is something that maybe the next chair will be passionate about. But certainly I hope the staff will be, and Reed, I know, will continue to be passionate about as hosts. I know this because I had an internship in 2001 with the National Trust. I worked not too far from Betsy. She didn't know me, but I was watching her. And it put me on the path that I feel like, I've been on today. And so these students who have come through our walls, either in person or virtually, in 23 years, might be able to have the opportunity that I've had to use some of the perspective they get at our agency to do something good. And so just to conclude, I do hope I've tried to do something good in this role. Even if some in this room might disagree with some approaches I've had or decisions that I've made, I do not believe it is the chair's job to sign documents that are put on their desk, to cut ribbons, and to call meetings to order. I think that the chair's job is to take action in the face of considerable headwinds that increasingly threaten our agency's longtime approach and even preservation itself, to harness the incredible talent and power of this agency to make progress, and to think critically about historic preservation and its future. So just in case this is the last chance I get to say this, I just wanted to say I'm very grateful to President Biden and to the Senate for giving me this opportunity. I'm grateful to each and every council member and each and every staff member for the support that I've received in this role, for your creativity, your flexibility. And just to say, as you probably can guess, I will continue to work until my last day to make sure that this agency does everything that Congress intended it to do and everything that it can do. And with that, I'm going to turn to the very best person to work with, Reed Nelson, for his report. Thank you, Reed.
Thank you, Chair Brown, and I appreciate those kind words and your leadership over these 22 months. I wanted to just give you all a report on the budget, operations, and personnel changes of the ACHP. I think it's important that you understand that we're working as a team to manage this agency as effectively as possible. And given sort of where we are in the budget cycle, I thought it was a good time to just sort of give you a quick assessment of FY 2024, how things went, where we are in FY 2025, and where we would love to be in FY 2026. So let me start just by acknowledging that in FY 24, the year that we've just essentially closed out a month and a half ago or so, we had requested $9.49 million for our operations. And that included some significant bumps up in covering salaries, expanding the intern program, improving our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure. Unfortunately, we did not receive that bump up. We essentially were funded at FY23 levels, which were $8.58 million, essentially flat level funding. And so we had to proceed cautiously through our expenditures in FY 2024, reducing perhaps a little bit of the scope of the intern program, scaling back IT infrastructure, which I have to acknowledge is always sort of one of our go-to savings, is to look at IT infrastructure, and perhaps delaying some filling vacancies as well. We had hoped to continue on in FY 2025 with an additional $1 million or so. We had requested $9.54 million, again, sort of bumping back up to that level we had requested in FY 24. And like so many other agencies, didn't receive that bump up. And so we're still essentially now in FY 25 operating at what were 24/23 levels. So we're continuing to work on essentially flat funding over the last year and a half or so. But I'm proud to report that we have maintained operations, maintained staffing. There have not been substantial cuts of any sort. We've actually been able to find ways to integrate some of those IT infrastructure updates, and we have continued with a very robust intern program. And I want to just stop briefly and thank Chair Bronin for that in particular. Her leadership in expanding this program and making the ACHP a place that students from around the country want to come has really been amazing and fantastic, and we've all benefited from that. So we're continuing, as other federal agencies in the room know, we're continuing to operate essentially at those flat levels through December 20th of this year, along with all of our federal colleagues here, anxious to see what Congress will do regarding funding following December 20th. But I think it's reasonable to presume that at best we would continue with the flat funding that we're at now, and hopefully there's not an at worst scenario, but we will find out after December 20th. I want to also just acknowledge that for FY26, again, with some specific guidance from OMB, we requested essentially again $9.56 million, which is sort of adding that million or so back in. And that will allow us to do some really urgent and I think important IT upgrades, maintain staffing levels, and continuing to expand our intern program as well. I'm not holding my breath that level of funding will be provided by Congress, but I just wanted you to understand the stance that we've taken and the case that we've made with the administration and the Congress about the important need to continue funding in our agency. I would like to think that we're an agency that has sort of always punched above our weight, that we have, with a small staff and a dedicated staff and your guidance, have made a really substantial impact in the preservation program, the preservation discussion, and as a proud and important member in the environmental review process. And so we work very hard to be as effective as we can with the staff that we have. So that's just a sort of a quick recap of where we are from a budget standpoint. Now I want to go through some personnel changes. I want to start first with some welcomes, the happy part, and then move to some goodbyes. Let me start first by welcoming Ashley Fry as our new director of our Office of Tribal and Indigenous Peoples. Ashley comes to the ACHP from the U.S. Department of State's Cultural Heritage Center, where she was the executive director of the Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee, and she also led the White House Council on Native American Affairs International Repatriation Subcommittee. The director of the Office of Tribal and Indigenous Peoples is a very important part of what I consider our senior management team, a vital position that has been very actively engaged with the members and the committee that oversees that office. And so it's very important to me that we have qualified and leaders in that position, and that's why we're delighted to have Ashley step into that position. And Ashley's in the audience. I wanted to just invite her to maybe stand and say a few words about herself, or come to the table if you'd like. Yeah.
I have a name tag and everything, so. Hello.
Push.
There we go. As Reed mentioned, I'm coming from the Department of State's Cultural Heritage Center, where in addition to working with the Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee, also worked with tribal and Native Hawaiian organizations on the repatriation of ancestors and other significant cultural items from international institutions. Prior to that, I worked at the Department of the Interior and the Regulatory Affairs and Collaborative Action Office in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. And prior to that, worked again at Interior with a small office called the Indian Arts and Crafts Board. So I've worked with tribal and Native Hawaiian communities for the majority of my career in the protection of cultural heritage. I'm really excited to be at ACHP and to work with all of you, and especially with Amelia and Lakota. I really look forward to what we put together in the next couple of years, and already had the pleasure of working with Monica Rhodes yesterday on recording a podcast for Preservation Perspectives. And Lynn, thank you so much for putting that together as well. So I'm happy to be here. Really look forward to having that one-on-one connection with tribes, hearing directly from tribal and Native Hawaiian communities on what's needed within the 106 process, and looking forward to being the best advocate I can be for those interests here at ACHP.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome again. I also want to move along on my list of welcomes to acknowledge that Casey Miller has recently started as our new FHWA liaison. Casey, are you in the audience? You want to wave? Hi, Casey. Good to see you, and I want to again extend our appreciation to the Federal Highway Administration for supporting a long-term partnership there. And now I want to move on to some departures. First, I want to just acknowledge a few people that have moved on to other agencies. Jamie Lee Marks, who had been supporting the Tribal and Indigenous Peoples Committee as the acting OTIP director, has left for a position in the State Department, so we wish her well there. Raina Reagan has also, who worked with us as a National Park Service liaison, has left for a position back at the National Park Service. We wish her well. And now I want to just talk about a couple of retirements. I want to just acknowledge that after 15 and a half years of service to us, that Odette Williams, our administrative assistant, is retiring from federal service. If you've ever visited us in person, you've probably been welcomed and greeted by Odette. She began first in the Office of Federal Agency Programs and then moved to become the administrative assistant for the entire agency, and she worked very closely with Ishmael and others. And Odette was a very solid and stable part of the staff for 15 and a half years. So Odette, I hope you're out there, and we wish you the very best in your retirement. And then I wanted to move on and acknowledge that Susan Glimsher has announced her early retirement. Susan, our director of our Office of Communications and Education and Outreach, has been with the ACHP for 17 years. Through her leadership and hard work, the OCOs, she and the OCO staff have really achieved a lot of important work and helped elevate and expand and communicate the message of the ACHP to an ever broader and wider audience. I have counted on Susan as a member of, as I mentioned earlier, the senior management team of the staff, and she has done amazing work in those 17 years. She, as I think many of you know, supported the Office of, or the Communication, Education, and Outreach Committee for 15 years. She was also, for example, just to name a few highlights, our staff lead on the cultural heritage in the forest, Chair Bronin just mentioned, and before that, preservation and practice. Also, very much an active part of and a leader of what we referred to as BAMIP, our Building a More Inclusive Preservation Program. For many years, she led the charge of the ACHP, continuing to make sure that our program was inclusive. And she also worked directly with all the other offices to up their game, to make sure that all of the offices were communicating as effectively and clearly as possible. So Susan, I want to thank you for your 17 years of service. I also will acknowledge that Susan has asked that we not set up a party or a special event, so be warned that you have between now and the end of December to reach out to her and contact her and maybe wish her your goodbyes. And I wanted to just invite her to come forward to the table and maybe say a few words about her time here at the ACHP.
Thank you, Reed. First, I would like to thank the members, past and present, for their dedication and for being a critical part of the ACHP. Many of you have shown your commitment to historic preservation, and we appreciate your service. I have become friends with a number of you, and I will miss working with you. Secondly, and I wish I could turn around, so forgive me, I think I'm supposed to face forward. Secondly, I would like to express my deep gratitude to the staff of this agency. I have worked in many organizations, from Los Angeles to New York City to Washington, D.C., in my career, and it is rare to find people who are as committed to their work and to each other as the staff of the agency. Your work and your focus has always been inspiring to me, and I am so glad I've had a chance to get to know the staff at the ACHP. This, of course, goes double for the team members of the Office of Communications, Education, and Outreach. A huge thank you to Shayla, to Patricia, and to Lynn, wandering around, for your loyalty to our small but mighty office. I've always appreciated the fact that you have done your work, done it really well, and done it on time, even when your deadlines were like 6 minutes. So thank you for that. Lastly, I want to thank Reed Nelson. Reed and I have been working together for 17 years, and we've been through some tough times in that 17 years, but we're still here. And I want to thank you for being such a great colleague and leader. As the executive director, you do an excellent job of leading by example, using positive reinforcement and encouragement and providing gentle direction when needed. I have been honored to work with you for 17 years. Thanks for navigating that time with me. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And I was thinking if there were any others who I've actually worked really closely with for 17 years. And I would like to extend that thanks to Drew and to Kelly and Javier, who has always been there for a laugh, and Blythe. And I hope I'm not forgetting any of the other long-timers who have been by my side for 17 years. Lastly, I would just like to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to work for this agency, and I look forward to hearing many more wonderful things about the work you do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate those words a great deal. And again, congratulations. All right, so just to wrap up very quickly, I wanted to acknowledge, relating to Susan's departure, that we have finished advertising the director position, and I hope any day to be getting referrals for the director of the Communications, Education, and Outreach Office, and look to bring in a qualified candidate as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to, on an operational from an operational standpoint, just quickly acknowledge that when the ACHP signed its most recent lease for the National Building Museum, we built in a clause that allowed us at the end of year 3 of the 5-year lease to downsize. Recognizing that we and many other agencies are still sort of experimenting with teleworking versus remote working versus in-office presence. And we are in year 3 of our lease, and so I will be working with Ishmael and others to analyze our current office space usage and make some decisions about whether we want to continue on leasing the entire space that we have or whether we want to reduce that. Of course, a number of things related to the election will no doubt influence that, so that decision will come a little bit later in the fiscal year. So, Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reed. So moving on to the third topic on our agenda, this conversation that we have been having over the period of time that we've been considering the climate change and historic preservation policy statement, as well as the recent conference on international approaches to climate heritage, loosely defined as the response by other countries domestically to the risks of weather events, natural hazards, as well as the opportunities that historic preservation provides to actually help to mitigate climate impacts. I do just want to note the importance of the ACHP's role in these discussions, and the fact that we, I believe, have really started to convene a dialogue that many other agencies and outsiders can be engaged with and can move forward. I do want to thank, on the conference front, Experts Advisory Committee member Andrew Potts for his role in really helping to craft the nature of the event, as well as invited speakers, and to thank 3 of our members, Erica Varami, Beth Savage, and Amelia Marchand, as well as Ashley Fry, for their participation in the conference. I would like to turn possibly to Member Avrami to ask her for her thoughts. And the purpose of the conversation today is really to try to understand what can we take from these conversations, and particularly the conference, and what can we incorporate into the ACHP's information and thinking as we move forward in, again, hopefully continuing to lead in convening both conversations and also identifying solutions. So, Member Avrami, please.
Thank you, Chair Bronin. I think the event was very well organized, and I'm grateful to everyone at the ACHP, Georgetown University, and others who were part of that organization process. And we were very privileged to learn about how work regarding climate action and historic buildings, historic properties, historic landscapes, and historic communities are seeking to become more resilient through policy efforts. And I think those scales of action, from the very local to the national, were reinforced by the discussions in ways that promoted a lot of opportunities for us here in the US to consider a creative span of options for improving our efforts to both promote building reuse and energy efficiency, as well as the resilience of historic properties, landscapes, and communities. We also raised these points and asked the Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee, who met last week, about how we can continue to promote some of these ideas, especially building reuse, which in many ways is reinforced largely by our tax credit programs, as well as energy efficiency, and the potential for the diversity of tribal, state, and municipal models to inform federal policy, even if direct engagement on the international arena may not be an administration priority. And that last point, there are a number of innovative efforts afoot in various municipalities across the country and through our tribal communities as well at the state level, and that these offer really insightful opportunities to seek avenues that work best for various communities. So I'm excited to see that advance as an effort of the ACHP.
Thank you. Member Marchand or Member Savage, would you like to add anything?
Thank you. I'll just share a few words. One of the things that I was reflecting on as I participated during the webinar, because I wasn't there, unfortunately, in person, but I was able to wake up quite early and participate the majority of the day, is that tribal nations and indigenous peoples in our country and around the world are some of the leading experts in adaptation and resilience for their governance structures, for their social and economic systems, for their climate resiliency, and for their cultural heritage practices. So I think not only is it important to see what the United States can learn from our partners of other nations in the realm of climate heritage, cultural heritage protections, and as we move towards a more uncertain, actually it's pretty certain now, I would say, but a little bit more turbulent climate system, but also to reflect and be open to learning from the tribal nations here. So I'm really looking forward to how we can learn together, advancing forward and protecting all of those places, sacred graves, those places that inspire us, natural and built, for not just us today, but for the next 7 generations. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I won't add too much either. It was a great day, tremendous series of presentations and discussion that were held. And I do think that some of the things you've already said this morning about your work here at the ACHP and what's been accomplished in the last 22 months is at the foundation of this. As we go into yet another change of administrations, that isn't like an overlay zone on the work that we do. But the work that we do, whether it be tribes or state historic preservation offices or federal agencies in preservation, the work we do is foundational. And much of it is, although we evolve and although we repackage, the foundational work we do is key, and for all of us. And to be able to do it together and collectively, one of the things I took away from the symposium that day was, although there are some differences, there are so many commonalities. And we really need to be looking at the commonalities that we share, whether it be in the US or other countries, and work collectively on those commonalities versus our differences. And I think that's going to be a message that will ring throughout the next several years for the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Would any other members like to speak about this item on these, again, international approaches, how we approach as an agency moving into 2025 and beyond, integrating some of these issues and learnings into our work? I will just add then that I think that the investment that the Permitting Council has made in our ability to collect information that is non-confidential about the location of our historic resources, which is something that we mentioned in the Climate Change and Historic Preservation Policy Statement, is part of this foundational, just foundation building, because we need that data in order to plan. We are not collecting data at a huge scale with our first development in our first foray into data, but we are making a start. And hopefully with Reed's leadership, and this is the largest single investment, I think, in the agency. for an agency of $10 million to get over budget to get a over $5 million grant is pretty huge. And I think it will pay off. And I do think it will pay off, particularly in the climate sphere or in the resilience sphere, because when we understand where at least some of our resources are, we can, I believe, better plan, again, something that was called for in our policy statement. For members who have not seen the report that I asked the Library of Congress to create about other countries' approaches to historic preservation, that very lengthy report covering, I believe, a dozen different countries and their preservation approaches in terms of their internal domestic legislation is available. And so I encourage folks who have not seen that to read it. I got an email yesterday from a fellow professor saying, "Hey, have you seen this report?" Yeah, I've seen this report. It's a good one, and I think maybe can provide some inspiration for finding some of that common ground that Member Savage just referred to. And then I think we'll talk again about the role of Indigenous peoples a little bit later in this meeting, but that is an opportunity for us. So these conversations continue to happen. World Heritage USA is doing their conference this week here in Washington, D.C. They're talking about this, as I mentioned, the 1772 Foundation, the National Trust, the Climate Heritage Network, which is an international group. So these are live conversations in our field, and I hope that ACHP continues to find ways to move this effort forward. Turning now to policy and legislative affairs. Thank you, Member Avrami, for your very productive Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee meeting last week. The committee, as those who participated know, did consider recommendations to the full ACHP about specific pieces of legislation. And so I will turn to Member Avrami for a summary.
Thank you, Chair Bronin. As noted, the Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee discussed several pending bills in Congress last week. Details about these are available in tab 1 of the meeting book. There was consensus among the committee members to advance the motions outlined in the meeting book for consideration by the full membership. I'd like to, at this time, ask Drew Null to come to the witness table to be available if we need any questions answered or additional details. The first pending legislation that was discussed was the Revitalizing Downtowns and Main Streets Act. This bill would create a new preservation-friendly tax credit to encourage conversion of non-residential buildings for affordable housing. The Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee recommends adoption of the following motion. Moved that the ACHP supports the Revitalizing Downtowns and Main Streets Act, which will incentivize conversion of historic commercial and industrial buildings for housing, and directs the chair to so advise the Congress. Moved.
Okay, so is there any discussion on this item?
Need a second.
Is there, so I'm sorry, I just wanted to, so was that a motion?
Yes, that's the motion, yes.
Okay, so I would have called for a motion, but I'll call, no, it's perfect. So it was moved by Member Avrami and then seconded as well. Did we hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Tannenbaum. And so is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, I believe we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Or would you like to, oh, sorry, Governor, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I have an expert, a question for the expert, if you could explain how the stacking of the two credits would work and how that they are limited ultimately by the legislation.
Yeah, I mean, the new credit would indeed be able to be stacked with the low-income tax credit, for instance, and the historic tax credit. But it does specifically state that when stacked with the historic tax credit, it would be only allowed at 50%. So when it's allowing the two to be stacked together, but it does decrease the new credit when that happens.
It decreases the historic part of it.
I believe that it reduces the new credit, by 50%.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Yes. Did you have a?
Yes, my question is kind of geared towards the National Trust and others. I mean, this bill doesn't have that many sponsors. There's, like one sponsor in the Senate and a handful in the House, and with the timing, is there significance to the advisory council providing their opinions on it at this stage when it doesn't unfortunately seem as if it has a lot of traction? And this is a question basically for all of the ones, that we're commenting on. It could be significant to look into the next Congress, and then carry this letter over. But it doesn't seem that hopeful right now with the absence of a broad network of sponsors.
Well, I'll just respond by saying that I think expression of support from the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation could help initiate more support. And I don't see any downside to the chair expressing that support for the legislation.
I will also note that it is
Do you
addressing
need your
the House.
microphone, or is it on? Okay.
It is on. Basically, what I was going to say was basically, I think that the housing issue, the housing shortage is a bipartisan issue. I mean, both campaigns really dealt with it. And so this is one preservation issue, and one way we can show that preservation supports is a positive, not a barrier to housing development, and go ahead and get on record for that now. And as Ann Walker was saying, that also presumably, unless retracted by the council next year, would carry over.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, we'll turn to the roll call vote.
Okay, voting on our first motion, Vice Chairman Jordan Tannenbaum.
Yes.
Carmen Jordan Cox.
Yes.
Erica Avrami.
Yes.
Monica Rhodes.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Jane Woodfin. Amelia Marchand.
Yes.
Governor John Carney.
Yes.
Representing the Architect of the Capitol, Joey Mamura.
Yes.
Representing the Secretary of Agriculture, Homer Wilkes. Representing the Secretary of the Interior, Mike Martinez.
Abstain.
Representing the Secretary of Defense, Ron Tickle. Representing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Trey Watkins.
Abstain.
Representing the Secretary of Transportation, Colleen Vaughn. Representing the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Michael Brennan.
Abstain.
Representing the Administrator of GSA, Beth Savage.
Abstain.
Representing the Chair of CEQ, Anna Unruh Cohen.
Abstain.
Representing the National Trust, Betsy Merritt.
Yes.
Representing NAFPO, Lakota Hobai.
Yes.
Proxy for the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers, NAFPO.
Yes.
Proxy for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the National Trust.
HUD votes to abstain.
Chair Sarah Bronin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on.
Moving on, the next motion addresses the Fix Our Forests Act. The bill's proposed application of the Section 106 emergency provisions to a broad range of projects could lead to very limited consideration of historic properties and federally controlled forests at high risk for wildfires. The Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee recommends adoption of the following motion, which has been tweaked slightly from what appears in the meeting book to emphasize that some individual forests and regions already have program alternatives in place to streamline Section 106 review. So moved that the ACHP urges Congress to remove section 106A3A4 of the Fix Our Forests Act, HR 8790, referencing 36 CFR Part 800, since alternatives exist under that regulation to expedite forest management projects without invoking emergency provisions that may result in irreparable and unnecessary harm to historic properties. Stands ready to work with the Forest Service, BLM, and BIA to develop program alternatives tailoring Section 106 reviews to forest management activities in high-risk areas and enhancing such program alternatives where they already exist for specific forests and regions, and directs the chair to so advise the Congress.
So I'll take that as a motion and we'll ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Governor Carney. Is there any discussion on this item? Yes.
Part of what I want to say comes from personal experience. I've worked as the lead archaeologist for my tribe during burned area emergency response activities. So I've walked a lot of miles in fire gear, documenting wildland fire damage to not just our reservation lands, but private lands within our reservation as well, and impacts to cultural sites, not just from wildfire, but also from wildfire suppression activities, including establishment of drop zones, including water withdrawal sites, including the air attack measures for dropping fire retardant. And I really appreciate that the council is bringing this forward, because when emotions are high during emergency response situations, there are mistakes that are made. And a lot of times, the worst case scenario is when lives are lost. But for those of us that also are responsible for maintaining the integrity of our cultural ecological sites, when there's damage from wildfire or suppression activities or subsequent rehabilitation and restoration activities that did not go through the process for review and consideration, that can be just as frustrating, just as challenging, and just as painful. So I really appreciate this coming forward, and look forward to hearing from others that have any input on the topic and voting today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Cohen.
I just wanted the council to know, in case you didn't, that there is a statement of administrative view on this bill. The White House did oppose its passage during the House vote, in large part because of the provisions regarding the National Environmental Policy Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. It is worth noting, if you look at that statement, that there are a number of things in it about forest management that the administration has worked with Congress on and is supportive of. And so, it makes it somewhat challenging in that regard, but did just want to make sure the council was aware that there was a statement against it from the White House.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Coming from the West, where my home state of Colorado is 20% Forest Service land, with countless cultural resources. And I feel as if this could be an incredibly slippery slope for other public land managers to consider. But on a positive way, I feel as if these are some language fixes that could be done by the trust and NICHPO with some positive advocacy to get some of these language fixes in a larger bill. And I think it's important to express the opportunity to provide those fixes to the appropriate members of Congress to be able to make that and have that SHPOs from states of large acreage of forests, national forests, our tribal partners and others to voice the continuation of full 106 compliance in these important places. There's also a lot of issues, of course, with forest fires and things that impact in emergencies where I know individual states have taken action on that. So I would hope that it wouldn't just be a letter of support, but more action to ensure that this doesn't get passed as it is now.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments? Okay, so with that, we'll call for, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sure, Ms. Merritt.
I just wanted to say that I especially support the portion of the motion that offers to work with the Forest Service, BLM, and BIA to develop alternatives that would tailor Section 106 reviews to forest management activities. And I wonder whether that offer of assistance or offer to work with collaboratively with others could be extended to congressional staff as well. And this is in response to Ann's comment.
Certainly. I don't know if that needs, if you're suggesting a formal amendment, but I think that the communication of the letter would help facilitate that process.
I'm not suggesting a formal amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will just note that one of the first things that will likely happen after we, if this does go forward, is that we reach out to these other agencies to see if we can find some common ground or go together to Congress on this. So thank you for that. But I expect that that would be one of the next things that we would do. Seeing no other comments, we'll have a roll call vote.
Voting on our second motion, Vice Chairman Jordan Tannenbaum. Carmen Jordan Cox.
Yes.
Erica Avrami.
Yes.
Monica Rhodes.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Jane Woodfin. Amelia Marchand.
Yes.
Governor John Carney. Representing the Architect of the Capitol, Joey Mamura.
Yes.
Representing USDA, Homer Wilkes.
The Forest Service supports the official statement made by the administration opposing the bill. Oppose, if that's what you're looking for. So yes.
So you are opposed to our motion?
Say that again.
So the motion would be to submit a statement from the ACHP that opposes the bill. So you're supportive of that motion, or you are?
I'm supporting what the administration stands on it, and they oppose the bill.
Okay, so that's I believe a yes.
Dr. Wilkes, that's a yes for our motion from USDA?
What was that now?
For this motion, I think you're suggesting that that the USDA is voting yes on this motion, which opposes the bill.
To oppose the bill. That's
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
We just want to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Representing the Secretary of the Interior, Mike Martinez.
Yes.
Representing the Secretary of Defense, Ron Tickle. Representing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Trey Watkins.
Yes.
Representing the Secretary of Transportation, Colleen Vaughn.
Yes.
Representing the Secretary of VA, Michael Brennan.
Yes.
Representing the Administrator of GSA, Beth Savage.
Yes.
Representing the Chair of CEQ, Anna Unruh Cohen.
Yes.
Representing the National Trust, Betsy Merritt.
Yes.
Representing NAFPO, Lakota Hobai.
Yes.
Proxy for Nick Shippo, NAFPO.
Yes.
Proxy for HUD, National Trust.
HUD votes to abstain.
And Chair Sarah Bronin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item C.
The next motion addresses the Julius Rosenwald and Rosenwald Schools National Historical Park Act. The bill would create a new national park and a new National Park Service assisted network of historic sites associated with philanthropist Julius Rosenwald and the schools he funded for African American children. The Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee recommends adoption of the following motion. Moved that the ACHP supports the Julius Rosenwald and Rosenwald Schools National Historical Park Act, S5122, HR 9691, and directs the chair to so advise Congress.
Thank you. So is there a second?
Second.
I'll take Vice Chair Tannenbaum's second on that one. He's closer. With that, any discussion?
Yes, thank you. I'm curious to take a quick poll. How many of you before today's meeting, or if you were at the committee meeting on this, haven't heard of Julius Rosenwald? Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. It passes. Let me just, as a member of the board, to establish a National Historical Park or a national monument, if that's the way this goes first, and then ultimately a National Historical Park. This is a story that is just, that most people don't know about. Julius Rosenwald, the CEO of Sears and Roebuck, 1870s, 80s, during the period of Jim Crow, visited by Booker T. Washington, who tells him that educational facilities are separate, but they're certainly not equal. And he asks for his help in changing that situation. Julius Rosenwald agrees to go down south. Julius Rosenwald, by the way, is a philanthropist before this and has supported many projects. And he goes down south and he sees that, yes, this is a real problem. And he decides that he is going to do something about it with Booker T. Washington. They put together an incredible partnership where Julius Rosenwald will fund a third of quality schools in the South. The local school board that has to give some funds will do a third, and the community will come up with a third. And through this program, they build 5,300 schools in the segregated South. 2/3 of all African American students in that area go to Rosenwald schools. It is an incredible story that many people don't know about because Julius Rosenwald didn't want the schools named after him. He was focusing on the communities, and he wanted them to come up with names for the schools. And his foundation, he intentionally decided that would essentially go out of existence after he passed. This is a story that needs to be told. It is a wonderful partnership between the African American community and Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington. I am a professional development now consultant, and I carry this worn piece of paper around with me everywhere I go. And Julius Rosenwald said a number of amazing things, but to me it really speaks. He says, "All the other pleasures of life seem to wear out, but the pleasure of helping others in distress never does." I urge you to support this legislation. It's very important. It would also, as I'm informed, be the first National Historical Park honoring an American Jew, which is, I think, significant as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that perspective, and I can testify that is indeed a worn piece of paper that you've got there. So well loved, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there any other comments about this discussion? Yes, Observer Barnes.
Okay, I'm a native of Illinois, and Julius Rosenwald, as Jordan has commented, was a huge philanthropist, not just in Illinois, such as the Museum of Natural History and other things that he underwrote, but is a storied person himself, both in business as his philanthropy. But the Rosenwald story is the cornerstone of his good works. And I think it's important to remember him as an individual. But I also live in Texas and live very close to a restored Rosenwald School. And there are many still in Texas and other southern states that exist. They are vanishing, and many of them are not in very good condition. The one I'm in West Columbia that I'm citing is in good condition. It's an exception, not the rule. So I would encourage the board, the council, to approve the motion as presented, because this is a very important part of American history, both in terms of African-American history and education history, as well as Jordan pointed out, that Julius Rosenwald was Jewish and was during a very difficult time even for members of that faith in American history. So I would encourage you to vote yes.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Martinez.
Notwithstanding favorable findings in our National Park Service study of a potential Julius Rosenwald National Park unit, we will abstain in the absence of a statement of administration policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we understand. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Voting on our third motion, Vice Chairman Jordan Tannenbaum.
Yes.
Carmen Jordan Cox. Erica Avrami. Monica Rhodes.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Jane Woodfin. Amelia Marchand.
Yes.
Governor John Carney.
Yes.
Representing the Architect of the Capitol, Joey Mamura.
Yes.
Representing USDA, Homer Wilkes.
Due to the fact that the administration has not taken a formal position on this, the foresters will abstain.
Representing the Secretary of Interior, Mike Martinez.
Abstain.
Representing the Secretary of Defense, Ron Tickle. Representing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Trey Watkins.
Abstain.
Representing the Secretary of Transportation, Colleen Vaughn. Representing the Secretary of VA, Michael Brennan.
Yes.
Representing the Administrator of GSA, Beth Savage.
Abstain.
Representing the Chair of CEQ, Anna Unruh Cohen.
Abstain, but noting the Park Service favorable study on the bill.
Thank you. Representing the National Trust, Betsy Merritt.
Yes.
Chair of NATHPO, Lakota Hobai.
Yes.
Proxy for Nick Shippo, NATHPO. Proxy for HUD National Trust.
HUD votes to abstain.
Chair Sarah Bronin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to the last item in this topic, item D.
So the final motion addresses proposed continued funding for the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Latino. The museum has received federal funding for development and planning since being authorized in 2020. The Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee recommends adoption of the following motion. Moved that the ACHP urges Congress to continue its ongoing funding support for creation of the National Museum of the American Latino when finalizing appropriations for FY 2025 and directs the chair to so advise the Congress.
Okay, so I will take that as a motion. Is there a second? Second by Member Jordan Cox. Discussion. I'll just note that I support this this motion in part because I think telling diverse stories, which is part of our strategic plan and part of our general mandate, is very important. And you can't do that without funding to support that. And so as this museum moves from concept to perhaps at some point an actual location, I do think our support would be helpful and consistent with our mission. Seeing no other comments, we'll call for a roll call vote.
And our fourth motion, Vice Chairman Jordan Tannenbaum. Carmen Jordan Cox. Erica Avrami.
Yes.
Monica Rhodes.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Jane Woodfin. Amelia Marchand.
Yes.
Governor John Carney. Representing the architect of the Capitol, Joey Mamura.
Yes.
Representing USDA, Homer Wilkes.
The president budget supports this continued funding of this museum. So even though the Forest Service or USD may not have an equity center, we support the administration. So that would be a yes if you got yes, no, and those type of things.
Your subtle answers are incredible, but for Shayla's purposes, we have to take it to the one word. But thank you for that vote and explanation, because I think it does help for the rest of the members to understand too how federal agencies make decisions on whether and what to vote for. So I actually really appreciate that. Carry on.
Representing the Secretary of the Interior, Mike Martinez.
What he said, yes.
That's a yes. Representing the Secretary of Defense, Ron Tickle. Representing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Trey Watkins.
Yes.
Representing the Secretary of Transportation, Colleen Vaughn. Representing the Secretary of VA, Michael Brennan.
Yes.
Representing the Administrator of GSA, Beth Savage.
Abstain.
Representing the Chair of CEQ, Anna Unruh Cohen.
Abstain.
Representing the National Trust, Betsy Merritt.
Yes.
Chair of NAFPO, Lakota Hobai.
Yes.
Proxy for Nick Schippo, NAFPO. Proxy for HUD, National Trust.
HUD votes to abstain.
Chair Sarah Bronin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for your thoughtful deliberations on all of these items. This is an important part of what the council does, and again, what it's tasked to do as an independent federal agency. So hopefully our advice will be heeded, as it usually is by Congress. So thank you to Drew and Member Avrami. And there's nothing else to report under your committee, so I think we'll move on. And I believe that we can move on without taking a break, because I think our last few items are, it will lend themselves to good discussion, but discussion well within the time period allotted for this meeting. So I'm going to turn now to item 5, which relates to the exemption for Indigenous knowledge-informed activities by Native Hawaiian organizations, and really an implementation plan for this item. So I think all members, many of whom very actively participated in shaping this exemption from idea, multiple drafts, including lots of consultation, and then to the completed product, which we voted to adopt some weeks ago. So I also thank Ashley Fry, Jamie Lee Marks, Kelly Finizzo, Bill Dancing Feather, and others for their support of this item. So this is the second exemption adopted by the ACHP in recent years. And I am very excited at how we read the language of our regulations, our statute, to use this to help to integrate Indigenous knowledge and support the use of Indigenous knowledge, just as we said we would in our policy statement. I will reiterate that I do hope that it can be expanded to Indian tribes after we have some time to see how it works. And with that, I'll turn to Amelia, Member Marchand, to discuss her ideas about implementing this exemption.
Thank you. So, as you know, this was recently approved back in October, and I really want to especially thank Chair Bonin and former member Reno Franklin for initiating this work. Many times we come to these places, and I think it's really, really important to acknowledge all of the good work that has been done before we got here. So I'm very, very thankful for that solid foundation coming forward. And then also for the work that the staff did in integrating comments throughout that. So I just wanted to share that first off. And on October 21st, ACHP did issue a press release informing folks about the approval of this exemption, and that was followed by publishing it into the Federal Register on November 8th. And then last week, there was actually a ACHP podcast episode that Member Rhodes hosted Chair Bronin and I on. So please take a peek, take a watch, and share it. It's not very long, and it's fun to listen to. So in terms of additional next steps for implementation, ACHP staff, led by Ashley, our new OTIP director, will be collaborating with partners to identify federal grant programs that fund Native Hawaiian organization activities in Hawaii that might qualify, and share information about this with agency staff. So that's kind of one of the first steps. Additionally, ACHP staff will identify opportunities to present at various applicable events, conferences, meetings that are organized or attended by Native Hawaiian organization representatives about the exemption, to continue to get the word out to that very important audience for this. And then staff will also be tracking the use of the exemption, including identifying success stories for future sharing with federal partners, and I imagine lessons learned, because that's always a good thing to do as well. And then last, to collaborate with partners, ACHP will also be including the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, as offered in the response letter that was previously sent, and the DOI's Office of Native Hawaiian Relations, to raise awareness about the exemption. So I'm wondering if there's any additional kind of feedback or information. When we had our OTIP committee meeting last week, which I know everyone participated in, so thank you guys for joining that meeting. We didn't get too much substantial changes to that outline plan. If there are additional insights, feel free to please raise them now or later. That's fine as well. But I think if there's any additional questions or follow-up, you can share them with Ashley, maybe. You could probably send them to me as well. And that takes care of wonderful news for the NHO exemption.
Great. Does anybody have any additional comments or ideas about how we might advance the use of this exemption? Because it's one thing for us to have adopted it. It's another thing for agencies to actually use it, and for Native Hawaiian organizations to start requesting its use. So I know between the initiatives that Member Marchand just discussed, along with some of the other things that we're doing, there's a lot that we can do to promote the use of this, and it looks like the Vice Chair has it.
I do. Very quickly, as I mentioned at the committee meeting, the Department of Defense has a number of courses, both beginner introductory courses and advanced courses on Section 106 through SECOS, an organization out of Port Hueneme, naval organization. We have a course scheduled for March, the end of March this coming year. And I'd like to suggest it's a wonderful opportunity to share this information with an audience that would need to know about this and should know about this. So I'd like to encourage that we build in a block of instruction during that course. I'm sure the instructors would be fine to do that as an opportunity to spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Chair Bronin. During our conversation last week on the podcast, Preservation Perspectives, you mentioned this was the first time ACHP used this exemption that was focused on cultural preservation and that being the lead there. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to lean in on that a bit more, because when we talk about preservation, typically how people imagine it is buildings, the things. But people and traditions are not at the center of that. So having an agency like ACHP lead on that conversation and demonstrate the value in leaning in on this topic around cultural preservation, I think is precedent setting, and it's something that we should certainly uplift and amplify.
Thank you. And I think, your work across so many different dimensions does emphasize the impact of preservation on people. And I do think that this, you're right, hadn't thought about it that way, that this exemption offers the opportunity to talk about cultural practices and the current practices that this exemption attempts to safeguard and promote the use of and integration into federal agency. Into the federal agency review process that can at times be challenging to integrate some of those things. So appreciate that comment very much. I will also just add that we are, sorry, go ahead. Ms.
Yes, just to build off of that comment, and I think it is, there are differences in terms of how NHOs engage in the Section 106 process versus how tribes are able to engage with having TIPOs. And so I think as I was reviewing this, another point or another opportunity for more awareness might be also through the Native Hawaiian school systems. Might be a really great way to engage the community members and the folks that are implementing these things in their daily lives to be aware of that this is a means in which they can enact these and continue these practices that they've been utilizing since for millennia. And I think that might be an additional way of really engaging at the ground level as well.
Thank you. So Ms. Fry, take note, and we can follow up on that as well. I think that also speaks to that multi-generational approach to our work that could benefit the preservation field and our agency for many years to come. Yes.
Yeah, so I think we've hit around it. I think trainings on this, on the correct application would be very helpful because there's interpretations out there and obviously using use cases. So I think that would be very, very important. And, some what we call slick sheets, a one-pager kind of to get that information out there quickly. Then they can dive into the training. I think that would be very helpful other than just reading it and going through it, but actually putting some application to it with some trainings, I think would be very helpful. So especially for the first couple of years when it's fairly new.
And I think we have an opportunity in our work with the federal preservation officers to do that as well. And that's duly noted. And I think we can work on that in pretty short order. Thank you. We're also working on another op-ed to help to raise awareness about this So stay tuned for that as well. But it's important that this get used since we've done the work on it. And I'm optimistic that it can provide a big opportunity for our agency to help to implement our Indigenous Knowledge Policy Statement, a topic to which we will turn next. So I'll turn it back over to Member Marchand to speak about further implementation efforts, not just for the Indigenous Knowledge Policy Statement, but for the burial sites, human remains, and funerary objects policy statement, which we also adopted last year.
Yeah, thank you. So over the last couple of years, as Chair Bronin mentioned, ACHP has adopted 2 significant policy statements affecting Indian tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations. As a quick refresher, one is that Indigenous Knowledge Policy, and it seeks to help Section 106 practitioners more fully understand Indigenous knowledge's importance during a Section 106 review and build off of the 2022 government-wide guidance for federal departments and agencies on Indigenous knowledges. And then the second one is the Burial Sites, Human Remains, and Funerary Objects Policy. And that policy established a set of standards and guidelines that relevant entities, at a minimum, seek to implement in order to provide graves, ancestral remains, and funerary objects the consideration and protection that they deserve. Over the past couple different meeting cycles, the TIP committee members were asked to consider how the ACHP should approach the implementation actions that we had committed to for those policy statements. And so deriving from those conversations, OTIP convened a meeting also of ACHP senior staff and office leadership to develop some additional draft implementation policies over the next 2 to 3 years. So we've got 5 priorities that I'll try to go through briefly. And the first one is to train ACHP staff on the policy statement, which I think is a really good place to start when you're implementing any new policy, is let's get the staff trained. And this was requested by consulting parties and council members to ensure integration of the standards into the work of the ACHP staff, so everyone gets started on the same page. The second priority was to develop informational resources about the Indigenous Knowledges Policy, which could be similar to one developed for the implementation of the Burial Sites Policy, and would also be for implementation of the policy in the field and additional external training. Third of 5, the ACHP staff also plans to review guidance and prioritize updates. This priority would have ACHP staff review current ACHP guidance to ensure consistent messaging and information. Again, so that everyone is on the same page and getting the same information at the same time. The fourth priority is that ACHP staff will also continue to support interagency initiatives and working group deliverables. And this will be done by looking at current interagency collaboration mechanisms, like with the White House Council on Native American Affairs or any future interagency working groups. And then the last, one of the last priorities, I should say, the last 5 that were proposed at the TIP committee meeting last week was that ACHP staff will seek agency best practices and sample language by collecting examples of recent consultations that have resulted in agreement documents that reference or implement these policies or similar policies. Additionally, ACHP staff can use this information to develop additional guidance and highlight successes as well as lessons learned. And so During last week's TIP committee meeting, we asked for some feedback on these 5 priorities that were presented. And there was general support. One thing which we've already heard was there also needs to be training provided to federal agencies and to tribes, not just to ACHP staff. So please know that that is something that the staff is also planning to implement as well. And I guess, Jordan, the suggestion that you had made for Member Tannenbaum, that the suggestion that you had made for the previous discussion about training was that for an in-person DoD Section 106 event?
That is an in-person course. I am one of the instructors for that course, covering 106, and it's given 4 times a year, 2 introductory, 2 advanced. The next, there's 1 course in February, 1 in March, 1 in June, and 1 in July. And we will be giving a course in person at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. One of the reasons why I wanted to revisit that is because there's also a need for recorded on-demand webinar training, because not everyone can travel to places far and wide, right, and survive the time zone change as well.
So member Chair Marchand, let me just say,
yes.
You live in Hawaii?
I do.
So perhaps you could join us. I'll get you the dates, and maybe folks would love to meet you.
Have your people call my people. We'll do lunch.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, will do. Will do.
Fabulous.
You won't have to do PT either. Don't worry about it.
Okay. And there won't be a time zone change for me. So, there was, so having those on-demand trainings was one thing that came up in the TIP committee meeting last week. I think it was the Department of Defense that raised that as a really great recommendation. And GSA also had indicated that they had been including the Indigenous Knowledge Policy with their Section 106 projects, and when applicable, and the Department of the Interior's Department Manual now also includes 4 different DMs that are specific to Indigenous knowledge, or that mention Indigenous knowledge as a best available science in terms of climate science and moving forward to address resiliency and adaptation issues. So one of the things that I would also like to recommend for the ACHP staff that are going to be building out these implementation plans, if your agency has existing resources, information, trainings, like what we were just discussing, like the department manuals and the USGS Indigenous knowledge best practices, please share them with Ashley. We would love to have this as a resource, not just for those going through the Section 106 process, but for those that just need to have those resources available, because states have to work with tribes too, and so do counties and local governments and cities. So where we can encourage this information sharing, I think is going to be much more smooth in the long term. And so any training materials, please provide them. One thing that Lakota and I were kind of mentioning to each other before the meeting started, and I believe she's done this with her staff, and in the past I have done this with my staff, is if there's staff within your agencies, and I know there are, that have to work in cultural resources and historic preservation, it is so easy to mandate these trainings for them. It's a few more bullets on their resume, and it's good for them too. It benefits them in the future and how your employees work, and what they learn and what they can provide. So I would also make that that humble recommendation as well, to consider that those be included down the line. I know this room is full of a lot of individuals that are at the higher levels of government, but let's make sure that the people on the ground are also getting this information that they need.
Chair Marchant, if I might, this is such a, I can use this bully pulpit to say, and building on what you just said about training staff, Ron, for the course that I teach, we usually get a full house of CRMs, cultural resource managers, and that's great, but they know a lot of this already. What I'd love to see is more training of facilities managers. Some of those folks who don't get this kind of training, but given the decisions that they're making, this would be very valuable. Just understanding why we have these regulations and why we're doing what we're doing. That would be very, very helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item, implementing these policy statements, or any other ideas that members would like to share? I will only add that the program comment out for discussion attempts to integrate some of the principles behind these policy statements into its terms. As I mentioned at the outset of this meeting, I do hope that looking into 2025, those kinds of the opportunity to integrate these policy statements into Section 106 documents is really carefully studied and vetted, because the Section 106 documents are where these policy statements really get their meaning. Without including them or referencing them, taking key provisions, and incorporating them into program alternatives or otherwise, they don't really have that regulatory force. So I'll just continue to say the implementation must include the Section 106 documents, and for ACHP to take the lead in trying to promote their integration. So seeing no other, yes, go ahead, Ms. Hawaii.
Yes, so just to kind of elaborate on that, I think it is really key to really start that as a standard best practice. As a working TIPO, this is something that we are constantly encouraging. So we utilize these policy statements as attachments to our inadvertent discovery plans that we provide to agencies when we are engaging in Section 106 consultation. Unfortunately for the tribes of Michigan, we do not have a state burial law. And so Native American ancestors are considered abandoned property under the state law. And so these are the things that we are dealing with on a daily basis. There is such a range of protections that occur across the US, across the states. And so, this is where these policy statements really matter. When we can get these into place in those consultation processes, this is how we are able to ensure that our ancestors are treated with respect and dignity. And so I just really encourage folks when thinking about how this gets applied more at the regional and state and local levels, this is where these policies matter.
I'll just note that
all ancestors matter, so that, or really fast, sorry. Yes, so we were actually just discussing this because we did have an inadvertent discovery occur right before I had to come out. And, for us, there is a standard that we want applied, and it's not just for our ancestors, it's for any ancestors who are potentially disinterred or, impacted and disturbed in any way. And so, it's not that we're asking for specifics for only our ancestors. We want all people to be treated with this respect and dignity. And that's where we really want to kind of see that equal treatment be applied. So, Miigwech.
Thank you. And just on that, just to underscore what you suggested regarding state laws, over the last couple of years, we've also developed protocols by which we as an agency can fulfill our congressional responsibility to advise state and local governments on matters of historic preservation policies that are included in draft legislation. So we've talked about this, the idea of a model state law in a number of different areas. This might be one of those opportunities. And we do have some information about state burial laws. I'm not surprised that some states don't even have them. And, if you think about the efforts where if, going into 2025 in this administration, if there can't be changes at the federal level, there's certainly changes that can be advised on at the state levels. And so I encourage members to continue to consider that opportunity because again, these policy statements are there. They are intended to guide the work of the agency until they are changed. And just given the amount of effort that has gone into the policy statements that exist, the agency can continue to use them as guiding their decisions and advising, consistent with our role. Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Bronin and Chair Marchand. I just want to underscore how important it is for us to hear these sorts of conversations about the implementation of policy statements, because we recognize, as the voice of staff here at the table, I will say that we recognize that you put a great deal of work and thought and commitment into developing these, and yet we know these policies are only as good as they are implemented. And so on behalf of the staff, I'll tell you that's what we do. That's our bread and butter every day, is to help you all implement these policy statements. And I want to just assure you that we will continue to do that in perpetuity as long as there are steps necessary to implement them, regardless of administration or the passage of time. So I just want to commit to you that we're very much prepared to do that. And I also would just want to acknowledge as well, as I think Vice Chair Tenenbaum said, had explained to us, that there's an ability that many of our federal members in particular, but all of our members have, to reach out to audiences that, try as we might, we can't always reach ourselves. So what I will say is, on behalf of the staff, we're always prepared to partner with you to be part of that messaging, to reach as many audiences as possible. So in the coming months, if you have any specific ideas or thoughts on how we can engage with you, please let me know.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your comments. Thank you for your leadership.
And just one comment slash question here. So as I'm listening, I'm thinking about the opportunity to engage with the National Council on Preservation Education, NCP, because they're training the next generation of preservation practitioners. And there's this disconnect between the conversation we're having at this table, which is critically important, and what students are learning in the classroom. And so I think if we can develop a strategy on how we can get what we're doing here in DC to students who are learning and entering this field, it would be incredibly helpful, that I think would play dividends quickly as they're entering the workforce.
Thank you very much. And I'll second that suggestion as well. The National Council of Preservation Educators, is that, or education, it has often stood alone and apart. And I know our fellow academic colleague here, member of RAMI, and others who've been involved in preservation education, I think can speak to the fact that more input is better and more exchange is better. So appreciate that suggestion. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for your leadership. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Would you like to make a note about the tribal working group?
I thought you were going to take the lead on that, but I would very much welcome your suggestion on this, and I will second it. Carry on.
Sorry, everybody. That's great. I learned last week during the TIP committee meeting that there had been a tribal working group previously convened by the ACHP that was in effect for maybe 5 years or so and disbanded around 2012, 2013. Did anybody else know that? Yeah, well, okay, if you're staff. One of the recommendations that I made previously to Chair Bronin and Executive Director Reed was that we establish a tribal working group for the ACHP, because I don't know if you know this, but there's over 570 Native American tribes, just Native American tribes. That's not counting other Indigenous peoples or Native Hawaiians in the country. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of easy recognition of that diverse representation with this seat and this seat at the council. So with respect to all of the wonderful minds that are here today, I had recommended that we establish a tribal working group to be a little bit more of a resource, a little bit more of a guide, a little bit more of a source for helping guide what can be done for historic preservation and still meet all the other goals that your federal agencies have, that you are responsible for the constituents and the communities that you represent. So happy to say that it sounded like Chair Bronin thought it was a good idea too.
I do. I absolutely do think it's an excellent idea. And if there's a way to stand up such a committee during my time, I will wholeheartedly support it, consistent with the chair's ability to convene subgroups that help to advise the work of the council. So I know our executive director is considering how we might do this, and I help to work together with you and NAFPO and any others who might be interested to identify the appropriate group. So it could be 574 representatives, or it could be some smaller number broken out by region, which is what I think you had recommended. And so I know that those conversations will be ongoing. And I do think it would be also very helpful to support our incoming director of the Office of Tribal and Indigenous Peoples as she gets up to speed with the work of the agency. And I think, everybody could use a little extra advice. That's why I can be in the experts group, and I think call on many of you consistently to try to provide different perspectives. That's what makes this council work better. So I appreciate that suggestion, and perhaps at some point in the coming weeks or months, you will hear more about that. But I do think it's an excellent idea, and I appreciate it. Okay. Don't want to cut anything off, but seeing no other hands, we'll move on to our last substantive item on the agenda, our regulation and governance items. And I know you've received several updates about some of the nationwide program alternatives under development, but I will turn to our vice chair / committee chair to provide a report about the most recent developments as we look to all of the very, very important program alternatives that OFAP is leading on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bronin. I would like to call up the Director of the Office of Federal Agency Programs because you give me some cover, and so you can answer some of the questions that may be coming up. And your name tag is right in front. I've been looking at it all during the meeting. And it also gives me a chance to thank you for your excellent work that you and your team do. This chairman really appreciates that a great deal. Thank you. So the committee received updates on several program alternatives that are underway, as well as several that have been completed. Since our last meeting in July, the nationwide programmatic agreement for programs administered by the National Endowment for the Arts has been amended to extend its terms, and the nationwide programmatic agreement for the National Park Service's Cultural Resources Grant Programs was executed. Additionally, members may recall that the vote recently concluded for the program comment for the National Park Service's Mission 66 era facilities has been done. I appreciate the members taking time to vote on that important initiative and reiterate my thanks to both the National Park Service and the ACHP staff for their work on that effort. Joy Beasley is not here. Please let her know again, which we appreciate that. And Mark and Michael, for your involvement as well. Thank you so much. I have a warm place in my heart for Mission 66. So several other nationwide efforts are underway, including a nationwide PA for NASA's facilities, 3 alternatives by the Veterans Affairs, and a nationwide PA related to operations and maintenance activities for transmission lines led by the Bonneville Power Administration. Staff will continue to update members on those efforts via the program alternatives in Development OneDrive. You may have to help me get on there, which is available at any time. Questions on those alternatives can be sent to the director, but she's right here in front of us. And so let's see if there are any questions before we conclude my section of this meeting. Questions on any of those, comments on any of the work? Okay. Well, we are doing a good job. Thank you again, Jamie. Terrific. And that concludes my report, Chair Bronin.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Director Leushinger again for all of her work and her staff's work on these many, many initiatives. In fact, I believe still the most program alternatives we have in development. We just keep doing more. So for better or for worse, that's where we are. And people are very busy as a result. So thanks, Reed, for leading the staff in that effort as well. Just the last item, and you've received, again, here too, multiple updates on this, and I'm very happy to say that we have continued to develop the program comment, formerly known as the program comment on accessible, climate resilient, and connected communities, now known as the program comment on housing, building, and alternative transportation projects or functions. I didn't write the whole thing down, but it's a little bit more straightforward in response actually to member comments. As you know, we received a number of public comments. We have been engaging in one-on-one tribal consultation. We have received significant feedback from members, for which I'm greatly appreciative. And we have a document now out for consultation that I believe is 2/3 of the size or so of the original draft. So we have responded to suggestions to clarify, to eliminate certain activities that were previously covered, and to really hone in on what was most important as we consider how a program alternative might help to advance some of the priorities that we had set out in prior policy statements. So as that process is ongoing, as additional consultation is underway, we'll continue to listen to feedback and make decisions in accordance with the feedback that we do receive. So I appreciate, again, all the staff that has been working on this document. What are you? Oh, you're turning it off. Okay. Unless there are any comments on that, I do want to turn to new business. Seeing none. Oh, yes, sure.
Chair Bronin, I just wanted to thank you for the time you spent with me answering questions that had come up from Chair Mallory, and appreciate all of your work to incorporate the feedback and comments that you've gotten, which I think is reflected in the new draft. CQ still looking at that closely, but did just want to note my appreciation for your conversations and responsiveness to comments.
Thank you, and thanks for commenting on the program comment.
If I might, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Susan Barnes for her, as the council representative to the ACHP Foundation, a nonprofit raising funds for the work and the priorities of the council. Thank you for stepping in at a crucial time and providing inspiring leadership. It has been a pleasure working with you, and I know that we'll continue to have dialogue on the issues that we've been dealing with in terms of ways to support the council's important work. Thank you very much.
I'll consider that, was that an item of new business?
Yeah,
New business.
New business.
Yeah,
sorry.
Item number 7A. Thank you
Right,
again,
right.
Observer Barnes. Are there any other items of new business that we need to discuss? Seeing none, I believe we can adjourn this meeting. Note that a schedule of events for the January and March committee meetings are in your packet. The next business meeting is scheduled for March 18th and 19th. We haven't set dates beyond that, given the change in administration, and who knows when we will get a next chair here. But I want to thank once again the architect of the Capitol for hosting, to read the staff of the Office of Technology Administration and OCEO for all of your work to support this meeting. So thank you, and the meeting is adjourned.